see what happens. There you are.
Hi, Amanda.
Hello. Hi. So we're live in our group, in my group, Serenity. Now, Glenda and I haven't done this before, so you will have to excuse us if we muck up a little bit. We'll try not to swear. But tonight we've come on, we're doing a 4-week conversation about consciousness, what consciousness is, and how we can all live a conscious life. And even if you're living an unconscious life, you might be able to learn something. So it might be good to listen. So this evening's talk, and it's all free, by the way. And this is Glenda, my friend from across the ocean. Tonight's talk, we're going to talk all about you are not your thoughts. So we're going to talk about the thoughts that are in your head and might even give you some tools to how to slow them down a little bit. So Glenda, how are you?
Thank you, Amanda. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to having a little bit of fun. Thoughts are my one thing that's always been my struggle when I'm young because I didn't know what to do with them. You know, whether they were good ones or elating ones. I reacted to nervousness about that. So how am I? I'm excited to talk about, I can say now is my favorite topic. Go ahead, Amanda. Thank you for asking.
That's all right, darling. It's just that when I was younger, which was not that long ago, um, I never even thought about my thoughts. They never entered my head that I had to think about the thought I was thinking. You just did it. You didn't really think. But when you start to get older, you start to think things and you listen to what you're thinking. So sometimes if you listen to what you're thinking and ask yourself, is this what I am thinking helpful to myself?
Mhm. Amanda, what would you tell someone who's struggling with their thoughts?
Um, so someone's struggling with their thoughts, which I do have people come and we have. I have clients that come with their thoughts with me, and we try to decipher their thoughts, whether they're good or bad. The thing is with thoughts, a thought starts here and comes in here and then goes out here. Now, what happens is the thought will come here, and if you listen to that thought, it will go in. And that's when your thoughts can then start telling you a story, which then leads to emotions, which then leads to all sorts of stuff. Where if you decided you didn't want to listen to that, you just let it be. Don't say, oh, for God's sake, stop, go away, because then it's not going to. I think.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I would completely agree. And it's also because I had to learn what that meant in order to have that awareness. I say that because I used to consider myself quite anxious when I'm young. So, using that as my benchmark when I say this, I had to learn that I didn't have to let my thoughts dictate how I was going to be in the world
Yeah.
because what brings the similarity for you and I is that we are openness in our heart and we want to share from there. So that when I would have these doubtful thoughts, I learned that that isn't who I am. So if someone is having thoughts like that, for certain, I ask them to come. This is you even suggested this to me at times. Just breathe. Because then
Absolutely.
what's happening is I'm coming from my consciousness inside. But if I'm not doing that, I have a question for you that I know that you could speak to well. And what should someone do if they recognize it and it's their ego they're speaking from? What would you suggest?
What if they wanted to stop that conversation with the
Yeah,
ego?
yeah.
Well, first off, you need to learn about the ego. Okay, and this is just a very short thing. I am going to do a course on it eventually one day, but I can tell you two things about the ego. First off, you have to know whether it's your ego speaking to you or your higher self. The difference between the two, this is very brief, by the way. The ego will speak very loudly to you. It will give you instructions to do something. So it speaks very, very loud. Your higher self, your inner self, or whatever you want to call it, speaks very quietly. And the only way you will ever get to hear your inner self is when you are quiet, when you are in silence. And that's when your inner self, your higher self, will start to have a conversation with you.
I so agree. When I mentioned that I used to come from that sense of busyness and didn't know how to be still, when I learned that that external presence and even that same presence of agitation inside wasn't
Yeah.
who I truly am, that was my first realization that I could change things. So tell me what works for your clients when they make that realization to help them out of that sense of agitation and busyness and doing to coming into that space of inner alignment and peace that we've both learned to have more presence and mindfulness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're all well, you get born into this world and you are a little baby. Your mum and dad are your world. They are your gods because they feed you, they clothe you. You can't walk or do anything, so you are solely reliant upon these two people feeding you. And then you grow up a little bit, you get to about two or three, and you start copying what they're doing, like you're walking around and you start sort of being a bit naughty. Then you go to school or nursery, I think it is, and then you start watching what other children are doing. Then it gets older, you go to big school, and then you decide that this is how you're going to live your life. And of course, then it's all over. So, no, not really. I'm only joking. But I think that I've lost the question now. What was the question?
The question was if somebody was a little bit agitated inside and how not
Yeah,
to listen from our sense of alignment. Because when we do, in that stillness, we get that inner knowing and we are living that alignment instead of just looking for the next right
doing.
answer.
Yeah,
Tell them how that can help them with the learnings and the presence that I see you have with your clients.
yeah. Because you have to. We're all so busy. We're all so busy doing when you need to stop the world for a moment, listen to your breath, and start to be rather than do. Learning to be in this moment because really, this moment right now, right here, is all that exists. And there is nothing else really. Quite hard to live your life like that. I don't wake up and I'm conscious every single day of my life. Trust me, there are days when I am so unconscious, it's unbelievable. And I just all of a sudden I go, no, hang on a minute. I can feel fear in my body, fear about certain things. And that's when I know that I've gone unconscious because I'm feeling fear, I'm feeling anger, I'm feeling all these things that can make you unconscious.
And I reframe how I perceive the same thing. It's just how because sometimes I need to make my own set of lenses of how I perceive something to make it palatable.
Absolutely. Yes, yes.
And that would be, um, I don't believe I go unconscious. And even though I think that's a bit of a falsehood, I don't want to be misleading. I lived for a long time with both of those, the sense of alignment of, like I know how to be still, and in my sense of wonder and love and presence and take actions just when it felt appropriate and timing, very consciously. And then obviously life comes. When I'm not in alignment with that feeling that comes up, I can still choose to wait to take action which is, I think I heard you say this, but the difference now is I'm going to wait to take action where I can instead of when I'm in alignment, better way to say it, because it's my body's actually reaction to something that doesn't feel in alignment with how I'm being. And it doesn't resonate any longer. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't have doubt about somebody questioning me or judging me, or I'll come back to the center to finish what I was trying to state. Before I could come into that place, I had to practice something I called conscious choice. And
Yeah.
it's really not for me, it's not a, it's not a true term, but it's a term that I gave it to give it context for someone like me who's learning to go from that place of being separate from this who we truly are to when you, like you mentioned, say discord of fear comes in, to come into alignment with that. I just had to be okay. It's okay to be scared, and I'm still conscious of both dualities. So for me, it could have been separate from source. Let's speak to that, because that's what we're speaking to.
Yeah.
And so the conscious choice of going, okay, now hold on a minute. I'm not in alignment, or I would have resonated with that pushback, right? Like you said, we would have reacted like that if I'm living in alignment with that moment. And if not, then I can at least, like you say, I don't call it unconscious. I would just say the awareness of all of your learnings and living by being this sense of true self. Now we're choosing to go, oh, that doesn't fit. And now maybe I'm going to go over here with a conscious choice because I want to come back into alignment with myself, even because maybe that scared me over there, or something that I used to do, even, if I own it. Maybe it was places that got me in. We've talked about these things, places that when I didn't come from alignment got me into places that I'm lucky to be alive, perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll get back to the point. So that's a good example for me to say that now when that happens, when I didn't listen to my inner knowing, I can still, like you say, breathe without judgment. And I think you believe this for yourself as well. And go, no, I need to do this thing. I can stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I call it a conscious choice. It's actually not me living consciously in that moment, but it's the next right choice to make. I don't mean,
Yeah. Absolutely.
but so it was like the pause and the breath you said, so that I'm taking my consciousness within me and I'm listening that. So that's why I said it's kind of not a true statement, but it was like, I call it like going down the river on my kayak when I've kind of been misaligned with my way of showing up the way I want. I'm going to go over to this port here for a second, just pause. So
Yeah.
when I heard you say that you go unconscious, I don't believe that to be true of you. You're very aware of other people's feelings, your environment, and yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But what I mean by unconscious, I don't mean, so my old self
Yeah.
is called Mandy,
Ah,
who is unconscious. Okay. Because I wasn't born, you're born conscious, but throughout your life, you become a little unconscious because you're not living with your higher self. I didn't understand about the higher self when I was 19. It wasn't until I got older in life that I realized, oh, actually, I have a higher self who really helps me. But then consciously, Amanda, who is the me now, understands about consciousness. And if I feel in my body that what I'm saying is not true or not right, then I step back, like you said. I step back, hold on for a moment, and then I will either rephrase it. I now, if I've said something wrong, I will put my hands up and say, actually, I don't know what I'm talking about. Where Mandy would bluff her way through the whole lot. And that is the difference between being conscious and unconscious. Conscious people don't need to blag their way through life.
no, and it creates more fallacy that we have to cipher through again later. And why do that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Just resistance and resonance that doesn't fit, that we don't need to create, and
Yeah,
and we'll come across it honestly sometimes very easily, where we go, no, that's not true. And then we, like you say, you'll take, my body will know that that's not in alignment at this point for me.
Yeah.
If it's in mistruth, or even if it's a misrepresented way of stating something, like I was saying about the conscious choice method. I never
Yes.
mentioned that here, but that's what I call it when I'm introducing it to someone who may be dissatisfied with their way of being and they're successful and they have all the things. But when they present, and I've been this, and that's what I'm speaking to, but they might have a little bit of not feeling fulfilled and not feeling authentic in the way that they really want to be living their life, even though this thing,
Yeah.
they're misaligned by not being authentic 100% listening inside. I
Yeah.
used to be, well, I still can be easily the doer. I get so excited that if I pull in and just do the balance of my excitement, I sink into the stillness of what brings me even more joy, which is, like you say, the inner alignment and the presence more so and deeply than I'm
Yeah.
choosing. I'm not even
But
choosing.
do you not think that once you experience peace,
Yes.
I mean, proper, true peace,
Yeah.
you can't unexperience it?
No, you can't unknow that feeling at all. No.
You really can't. And until you experience that peace, like you can have someone that lives in a castle that has all the money in the world, 500 cars if they want, lots of women or lots of blokes, depending on whether they're male or female. But if they don't understand about peace and living consciously and have inner happiness, then they will just keep searching, because all they need to do is come inside, because everything that they're actually looking for is inside, and that costs you nothing.
And it also brings the greatest fulfillment with something that's really easy. And the joy, I put it this way, when I went to a meditation retreat, I come out of that, it was a silent retreat. It's exactly what you're speaking to, Amanda, but it gave me such reassurance on my seeking journey when I was younger that I did stop seeking, but it validated. We did a 10-day silent retreat, and
Really, 10 days?
yeah, at the time I was well practiced and well versed in keeping silence and holding that. So I just wanted to speak as the thoughts and any thinking processes fell away, like we did many other things in between with the silence, like exercise and yoga, but meditation in between. Honestly, it was a contagious type of container. What was expanding and amplifying throughout our time together was this unconditional love and presence. That it's not that I know you've experienced that yourself, but it was one to such a depth of just unconditional love that when I come out of there, none of us needed to speak because we didn't need to do this. We did presence, and
Yes.
it was just beautiful. But that's what I feel when I feel peace. So without giving it words, there's almost a depth to it that makes my feet go on fire. That I know I'm being authentic and real and sincere. So
Absolutely, yeah.
that's the kind of sacred space that we can both hold for people because we know we need it and desire it for ourselves to feel real and authentic. So it
Absolutely, yeah. I
that's
went to um I went to a retreat once. It's quite funny. When I first lost my parents, I ended up at a retreat because I felt completely lost and so alone. Even though I had two beautiful children, I was felt very lost and alone. I almost felt like an orphan, even I wasn't. But anyway, I went to this retreat when I first started the conscious journey, and we they were all going down to this room called chakra, and they were going to do chakra dancing. Right? Didn't even know what a chakra was, and I thought, okay, I can do that. I'm just going to follow. It must be something good. We all went into this really small room, and we were quite crowded in there. And all of a sudden, like all the people that were there, they have been there lots of times. I am a newbie. I'm a new first timer at this place. The music came on, and they all started dancing really strangely. See, back then, I thought, what are you doing? What do you look like? And they were all moving about and chanting and that. And I thought, and I was sitting there like a complete plank thinking, I could make my way to that door. I wonder if they notice that I could get out of here, because I thought this is not for me.
Mhm.
But then the woman tapped me on the shoulder and she said, just relax and try and have a go. What can you lose? And I thought, well, she's right. So I started swaying and doing it. And do you know what? I didn't want to stop. When the class stopped, I won't go into depth of what happened, but it brought up all this emotion that I'd held for years. And I started crying and thinking of things that happened to me many, many moons ago was coming up to the surface. And I thought, oh my God, this is really weird. But it was fun. But you have to start saying yes to things. If I'd have gone to that door and walked out and gone, that is not for me, that's not right. You have to start learning to do things that you wouldn't normally do, I think.
And do you find that that was a very healing thing of the stuff coming up?
Oh my goodness me, yeah.
I didn't want to give it words. Why I asked is because, as you said, then when we come up against those doors, one thing I didn't learn when I was young, because I'm going to say family of origin didn't know how to maneuver, that's not the right way to put it, how to finesse easily
Yeah.
emotional challenges that would come up. So we just didn't. So I never knew how to surpass or move through and shift through. So when I did learn, it's like you said, the discomfort that I feel in my feet, like I said, my authentic feeling of when I'm aligned. And it's
Yeah.
funny, you come on fire as I get feeling really grounded and very, very passionate. My also the duality of when the discomfort, it balances, it dissipates the uncomfortableness to deal with the emotions that have, it's not even just emotions, the resistances that I created to something when I'm younger that I'm reliving to move through and pass through and change and shift.
Yeah.
Till you know that we might sometimes be bashful, standoffish, avoidant. I learned that as I'm young, but I don't do that now. I choose to just stand in it,
Right. Yeah.
and so we change, and then we shift off that imprint of that old reaction, and we don't do that any longer, or at least do it differently, which is better.
Yeah. There
Yeah,
was have you heard of Eckhart Tolle?
of course.
Eckhart
Yeah.
Tolle.
Yes,
He's
do it now.
brilliant, right? And I'm reading his
The now.
A New Earth at
Okay.
the moment. It is absolutely brilliant. But I tried to read this book about 4 years ago. And to me, he was speaking a completely different language. I did not understand what he was talking about. So I had to put the book down. So about a week ago, for some unknown reason, the book appeared. It's in my house. It's been in my house for 4 years, and it appeared. And I thought, oh, that's really strange. So obviously, I need to read that. So I started reading it, and I am amazed at what I'm reading. It was breathtaking. It
Hmm.
was really, really good.
What's the one thing from it
Um,
that stands out the most?
I'm going to tell you a story. I'll tell you one of his stories, and I know that the story has been around quite a bit. So, and he just tells it in a different way. So you have two monks,
Oh, yes.
and one of them's like the chief monk, the chief honcho. I mean, or Buddhas or whatever you know.
Yeah,
Two people that are in those lovely orange robes, but
yeah.
one of them is higher, slightly higher than the other one. Um, they're walking along the road, and there is a woman that wants to get across this riverbed that's all dirty and filthy, and it's really horrible. So the monk who is the elder picks this woman up and carries her across the river, puts her back, puts her down, and then comes back to the other side, and then they carry on walking.
Yeah.
Then later on that evening, when they were in the monastery or wherever they are, the younger Buddha said to the older Buddha, I cannot believe that you picked that woman up and helped her across the river the way you did. Why did you do that? Now, the older Buddha laughed and said, I put her down 5 hours ago, and you are still carrying her. So that just goes to show that if you really think about this story, because the older Buddha put the woman down on the riverbank 5 hours ago. The younger chap, or Buddha, or whatever you want to call him, is still carrying her in his mind. Emotionally, for 5 hours, all he could think about was why did he carry this woman across the river?
It takes a lot of
So
energy.
yeah, and that sort of story is if you really think about it, is amazing that that the elder Buddha had put her down and totally forgotten about it and was living in the moment,
And
where
very
the younger Buddha was living still in the past.
and very freeing of our energies and our
Yeah,
expansiveness and receivingness just stays so open when we don't house ourselves with that.
yes.
And forgive me, I'm going to call it trash. And that's from my past. I call it
Yeah,
trash.
yeah.
They're lessons and they're not trash. I shouldn't make such, but it sure felt not very, it was pretty stinky. That's why I called it trash.
Yeah.
But I made it mean that. What they were lessons unresolved that I didn't know how to walk and maneuver through. But when I did, which most of it was just the energetics, because that's how I took in the world when I was young. That's how I perceived things. And that was my lens of, that was my best lens at deciphering what was true and discerning. But when it felt uncomfortable, I didn't avoid it. There's a word I always wanted to say, but I also didn't integrate it in the same fashion, feeling safe, knowing what to do with it, how to place it just properly within a resonance way. I knew if it
Yes.
feels safe, it's not something I could partake in at that time for lots of reasons. And that was a good safety mechanism, but it wasn't allowing me to learn all of the things that young people learn when you might
Yes.
so that would be when I was in misalignment for sure, but made better choices, at least based on instinct. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
That was also not living in alignment with my true self. That
Yeah.
that did happen a great deal and kept me on the trajectory that was
Yeah.
really
But
successful.
yeah, but I think when we're younger,
Mhm.
you don't think that you have a choice.
No, sometimes.
But you know what? Every single person has a choice of how they are going to react to something that is happening in front of them.
Because we're not our thoughts.
Um, yes, because you're not your thoughts. If you don't like something that's happening in front of you, you can have a choice of walking away.
Yeah.
Some people go, oh yeah, well I can't because it's that's all utter rubbish.
Someone else's.
You are choosing to stay there. You
Or
have a choice.
we can still stay there but not take it on and allow the other person to be theirs without judgment, right? And I like that beautiful lesson that at whatever
Yeah,
point in our life when we learn that, because then it's no reflection of them, it's no judgment from us to them, to the world about, we just allow them the grace to be who they are. And I have to be honest, that's not me trying to preach, as it was one of my biggest learnings when I'm younger, to not try to take on when people in my periphery, when they were hurting and they were in addictions and things that weren't so pleasant. So when you learn it's you're not blaming them. I had to learn that my own was enough to try to manipulate through and be the best version I can be. And that's my own responsibility,
yeah,
is so I can then show up
yeah,
to at least support someone to the right amount of doing so. And those are the greatest lessons I've been given by listening in alignment. Yeah.
yeah. Did you have any more questions you wanted? Is
I
there another question?
Perhaps maybe it's not even a question. It's just comes to mind when we say, well, if we're not our thoughts. I just wanted to point out that my another greatest learning that's been presented, to learn that aspect that we are not have to be led by our reactions, was that the state that we're in, by being in alignment, like you mentioned, we're peaceful, we're calm, we're making our choices from something that's we're in resonance with already because we're open,
Yeah,
receptive, and listening instead of reacting to something or but we're also listening to what's right for you because you're going to find what's in resonance for you there. I'm going to find it over here. And we're all going to be at the same right end place with what we're in alignment for and bring our own gifts and our own helping our own way through life.
yeah.
And it's just the way it's been meant to be anyway. It's our own unique way of doing it and our own unique vibration. And I'm not trying to sound like I feel like I'm being a preacher, but that's not my intention. It was
No, not at all.
it was the state and the way we're being that creates the energy behind our thoughts, feelings, emotions, etc. So if we're in alignment with joy that comes from that place of being at one within, anything that comes from there doesn't require effort from the physical plane, doesn't take any energy, doesn't take any extra thought. It already is for me because I can feel it. I'm in resonance with it. I'm in alignment with it. So I don't question it. I'm not in self doubt. I'm in my higher self's alignment. And it's as close to being in my happiest essence I could ever be
Yeah,
that I want to share. So, what I wanted to say is when we create from here, as we both know, it then is the energy behind our thoughts, feelings, emotions of what we're creating from. So,
yeah,
why wouldn't it be anything but a high vibration that's easy to maintain? So,
yeah.
that's all. Thank you.
That's all right. That's okay. So if we're speaking, because don't forget we're speaking to people that I'm not saying that you are unconscious, because if you've listened to this far, I would say you're definitely on a journey to become conscious.
Yeah.
I think because you are finding it interesting. The thing is with Glenda and I, we both all of a sudden you don't wake up one morning. Well, do some people do? Some people are lucky. Some people wake up one morning and they think, oh God, I'm enlightened. It doesn't work like that. Sometimes the universe will throw a curveball at you and you'll think, why is this happening? Why is this happening? But you've got to remember that there is good in most things.
Yeah.
Somewhere, like I will always look for the good in everything. Even a bad situation, there will be somewhere, there might be a little spark. Everything happens for a reason. Um, that's how I choose to live my life. So if something bad happens in my life, I think, okay, so I need to stop and think about that. Why has that happened? And in silence, if you go in silence, i.e., meditation or just go for a walk just to be silent, you will get it if you listen. You got to listen to the silence. That's what I think. But I think, have you got any more to say? Because we've been on quite a while
No,
now.
I had a reminder of something that where I used to live, we would go walking at 5 a.m. in the morning. Do you remember that with your dog?
Yes,
And
with our dogs.
and I'm sorry that yours have passed since, but I just making
Yes.
recognition of that because it was that long ago, but it was also done for one for camaraderie, two many learnings. But you were up at the time that I would get up early
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
to be in stillness, to be in nature. We may have chatted a
Yes.
little bit along our way, and it was exercise, but it was also the stillness of nature. Because where I
Yeah,
lived, it was very similar to where you are in the countryside.
yeah.
You have a gorgeous area that you walk in. And now that I have had a chance to see that as well, I just wanted to speak to it's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah,
But
because everyone's got to remember that Glenda is 7 hours behind us. So when we used to go for our walks, even though it was 5 o'clock for Glenda in the morning, it was five, six, seven, eight, nine.
it
It
was
was more mid-morning for me. So we would go for our walks, and where Glenda was, it would be pitch black. But it was really nice that we can have that conversation.
and I think it come up because we were speaking about the reflection of being in alignment and being ourselves. And there's never a wrong self. If we're living as honestly as we can, then that's
Yeah,
the next race thing because we're living from our values, our morals. It makes us happy,
Yeah.
joyful place inside. And I think we all know how to do that integrally.
Yeah,
Listening.
absolutely.
And you nailed it when I heard you say in stillness and in quiet. It all is the same in all of us. And thank you, Amanda, for having me today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, is there one last thing you want to tell anybody?
Oh, golly. We both work
I
very,
mean, the conversation could go on all night,
but we
really, I
could.
think.
And I was going to say, perhaps just that we will be continuing the conversation in the next few weeks. And
Yeah.
you and I work with clients in probably very different ways, but for the same results. And I think just that I'm available as you are to work with people in that capacity to help them to live
Yeah.
in
I
alignment
think,
with their most
yeah.
essence. And that's all.
I
I just,
think maybe after
okay,
we've finished,
okay,
if we put our links, that if anybody does want to work with us on one-to-ones or wants to hold a conversation or anything,
okay.
you can book calls with us and you can talk to us if you like.
Thanks, Amanda.
The one thing I would leave it with is that to connect to yourself in this moment, you need to sit still, feel your feet on the ground, breathe in through your nose up to your crown, and then bring it back down. If you breathe like that 3 or 4 times, the silence that you're looking for is in between each breath. So if you breathe in for 4, hold your breath for, say, 2, breathe out for 4. But it's those 2 minutes is where you will find your higher self. That's next week's little conversation.
Thanks.
But
Wonderful.
we will endeavour to do another. Well, we're going to next Friday. We'll do another one, and that is going to be about. Oh no, next week we're doing. What does it mean about being in flow? So we'll explain to you how it feels to be in flow, how it feels not to be in flow, because it's all about living consciously. So that is it for today, Glenda. All right. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. So we need